Hey there, story lovers and English learners. Welcome to Story-Driven English, where wild tales make your English skills soar. Imagine this: Donald Trump eyeing Canada as America's 51st state. Crazy, right? But is it just a joke or the boldest move ever? Stick around for the Great Canadian Caper, a hilarious, twist-filled ride that'll hook you till the end and level up your English without you even noticing. Hit that subscribe button now and join our crew. You won't want to miss a second of this. Let's dive in. The Great Canadian Caper: how Trump's genius might just make Canada the 51st state. Picture this. It's a crisp March morning in 2025, and I'm sipping my coffee black. No nonsense, just like President Trump likes it when I catch wind of the latest rumor swirling around the conservative grapevine. Canada, our polite, maple syrup-loving neighbor to the north, might just become the 51st state of the United States. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's wilder than a MAGA rally on the 4th of July. But hear me out, because as a proud Republican and a believer in every golden word from our fearless leader, I'm here to tell you why this could be the most brilliant move since Trump brought back Merry Christmas to the White House. It all started with a whisper, or more accurately, a tweet. Back when Trump was gearing up for his triumphant return to the Oval Office, he dropped one of those offhand comments that make the liberals clutch their pearls and the rest of us nod in admiration. Canada should just join us, he said, or something close to it. I'm paraphrasing, but you get the gist. The media went nuts, calling it a joke or a stunt, but we Trump fans know better. The man doesn't just say things. He plants seeds. And this seed? It's sprouting into a full-blown story that's got me grinning like a kid on tax cut day. Now, let's get to the meat of it. Why would Canada even need to join the U.S.? The official line from the eggheads in D.C. and Ottawa is that there's no formal proposal for a merger. The U.S. Congress keeps yammering on about how we're close partners with Canada, 5 to 5 miles of shared border, NATO buddies, NORAD pals, and a trade relationship so big it could make a Wall Street tycoon blush. Canada's Prime Minister, that floppy-haired Justin Trudeau, even piped up with a dramatic "not a chance on this green earth" when Trump floated the idea. Typical liberal bluster, probably said it while sipping a soy latte in French. Even our own Senator Lindsey Graham, a Trump loyalist through and through, cracked a joke about skipping Canada after all 50 states certified Trump's Electoral College win. "We'll fix that next time," he chuckled. Ha! Classic Lindsey, but here's where it gets juicy and where I, as a red-blooded Republican, see the real game. Canada's been cozying up to the Democrats for years. Don't believe me? Look at Trudeau's bromance with Obama, or the way their lefty media fawned over Biden's every stumble. They've been thumbing their noses at us conservatives, acting like they're too good for the rough and tumble freedom we enjoy down here. Trump sees through it, though. He knows that Canada's holier-than-thou attitude is just a front for Their secret envy of our booming economy, our unapologetic patriotism, and let's be real, our superior BBQ. So why not bring them into the fold? Make them the 51st state, slap some stars on the flag, and call it a day. It's not annexation. It's liberation. Historically, this isn't as crazy as the snowflake crowd wants you to think. Back in the day, think post-Civil War vibes, there were folks in the U.S. who dreamed of hoisting the stars and stripes over Toronto. Sure, the Washington Treaty of 1871 cooled things off, and since then, no serious politician has pushed for it. But Trump isn't your average politician, he's a visionary. The experts say his comments are political theater, a way to rile up the base and grab headlines. Pfft. They said the same about the border wall, and look how that turned out. The man gets results.so. Here's how I see it playing out in this little story of mine. Trump's back in office. It's 2025, and he's sitting in the Oval Office, munching on a Big Mac, when he gets a wild idea. Let's invite Canada too. The party, he says to his team. They've got oil, hockey, and all the timber. Think of the jobs. The Liberals scream bloody murder. Trudeau throws a tantrum on live TV, and the internet explodes with memes of Mounties waving American flags. But then the Canadian people, good, hard-working folks tired of their sky-high taxes and endless winters, start whispering, hey, maybe this isn't so bad. Next thing you know, there's a referendum, and boom. Welcome to the United States of America, The benefits, oh, they're endless. We get their resources. They get our freedom. We teach them how to deep fry a turkey, and they show us how to apologize less. Okay, maybe not that last part. And best of all, those pesky Democratic leanings. Up north. Gone. 51st state means 51st batch of electoral votes, and you better believe they'll be redder than a lobster at a Texas cookout. Trump's not just winning elections, he's winning countries. Sure, the naysayers will cry, but what about sovereignty? Or what about international law? To that I say, details, details. Trump's never been one for red tape, and neither am I. If Canada's smart, they'll see this as the deal of the century. And if they don't, well, we've got the best military in the world, and I'm pretty sure Trump could negotiate a takeover faster than you can say, Poutine. So there you have it, a little tale of how Canada might just become our 51st state, all thanks to the genius of Donald J. Trump. Is it happening tomorrow? Probably not. But is it the kind of bold, outside-the-box thinking that makes America great? You bet your last dollar it is. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to go polish my Trump 2024 hat and dream of a future where the border's just a memory and the bacon's all American. The Great Canadian Caper, Part 2. Democrats, Mounties, and a Trump-sized solution. So there I was, still daydreaming about Canada waving the stars and stripes, when a nagging little question popped into my head. Why would Trump even want to scoop up our northern neighbors? Sure, the oil and hockey are tempting, but there's got to be more to it. Then it hit me like a lightning bolt at a MAGA rally. Canada's been playing footsie with the Democrats for years. As a card-carrying Republican who'd follow Trump into a snowstorm wearing flip-flops, I knew this was the real scoop. Time to dig in and see if those sneaky maple leafers' love for the left could be the spark behind the greatest annexation since Texas said howdy to Uncle Sam. Let's start with the numbers, because even a patriot like me can appreciate a good stat. According to some fancy 2024 polls probably conducted by folks in flannel sipping Tim Hortons, Canadians have a soft spot for the Democrats. They were 3 times more likely to cheer for Kamala Harris over our golden-haired champion, Donald Trump, in the last election. 60% of them wanted Harris strutting around the White House, while only 21% rooted for Trump, up from a measly 15% back in 2020 when Sleepy Joe was on the ticket. I'll admit, that uptick warmed my heart a little. Maybe some Canucks are waking up to the Trump magic after all. But it's not all poutine and roses up there. The Conservative Party folks in Canada, bless their rugged, moose-hunting souls, actually lean toward Trump over Harris in 24. That's a flip from 2020, when even they were swooning over Biden. Age and geography play a part too. Younger Canadians and Ontario types are warming up to Trump, while the over 55 crowd in Quebecers are still clutching their pearls for the Dems. Prairie provinces? They're practically half red already. It's a mixed bag, sure, but one thing's clear. Canada's got a big old crush on the Democratic Party, and it's been going on longer than a Toronto winter. Now, here's where the Liberals would chime in with their sanctimonious nonsense. Oh, but liking Democrats doesn't mean they want to join America. And yeah, the polls back them up. 90 of Canadians would vote no to becoming the 51st state, even the Trump-friendly conservatives. They're all about that sovereignty and national identity stuff, waving their little red and white flags like it's a hockey game. Fair enough. But as a Trump disciple, I see the bigger picture. This isn't about what they want, it's about what's best for them. And who better to show them the way than the man who turned America into a powerhouse again? Imagine this scene. It's 2026. Trump's in his second term or third, depending on how you count those stolen years, and he's staring at a map in the Situation Room. Look at this, he says, pointing at Canada with a Sharpie. They love the Democrats so much, they're practically begging for a taste of real American freedom. His advisors, probably including Lindsey Graham, who's still chuckling about fixing Canada, nod in agreement. They're sending us a signal. Folks, Trump continues, and I've got the best signals, believe me. We'll bring M in, make M red, and drain that liberal swamp all the way to Ottawa. In my story, this is where the genius kicks in. Canada's Democrat obsession isn't a reason to leave them alone. It's the perfect excuse to swoop in and save them from themselves. Think about it. 60% of them drooling over Harris? That's a cry for help. Trump knows the Democrats are a disaster, high taxes, weak borders, and don't get me started on their war on burgers. Canada's just too polite to admit they've been brainwashed by years of Trudeau's woke lectures. So, Trump does what he does best. He offers a deal. Join us, he says, and I'll build you a wall against socialism so beautiful. You'll say, please and thank you for it. The naysayers, probably the same folks who thought the Space Force was a joke, will point to that 90% no vote and say it's a non-starter. But Trump's never been one to let a little thing like public opinion stop him. Look at the trade deals he renegotiated. Canada didn't want to budge, but they did, because Trump's a master negotiator. Same deal here. He'd charm the Mounties, dazzle the lumberjacks, and before you know it, they'd be singing Sweet Home Alabama instead of O Canada, and those electoral votes. Solid red, baby. No more Democratic meddling from the North, just pure. Unfiltered American greatness.so. In this little tale, the Canadian love for Democrats isn't some boring statistic, it's the match that lights the annexation fire. Trump sees it, I see it, and deep down, maybe even those flannel-wearing pollsters see it too. Is it happening tomorrow? Nah. But is it the kind of bold, hilarious, America First move that only Trump could pull off? You bet your last loony it is. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to go practice my pitch for renaming Toronto Trump. Tower North, stay tuned, eh? The Great Canadian Caper, Part 3, Best Buddies or Future Family. Trump's take on the U.S.-Canada bonzo. Here I am, still chuckling over the idea of Canada waving a red, white, and blue flag when I realize I've got to give credit where it's due. The U.S. and Canada are already tighter than a pair of jeans after Thanksgiving dinner. As a loyal Republican who trusts Trump to negotiate a deal with a grizzly bear and win, I can't help but see this rock-solid relationship as the perfect launch pad for the 51 Street State dream. Let's take a stroll through this buddy-buddy. Bond and see how it's setting the stage for Trump's next big win. Because if anyone can turn a partnership into a family reunion, it's our fearless leader. First off, the numbers don't lie, and I'm not talking about the fake news kind. In 2023, over $2.7 billion in goods and services zipped across that 5 to 5 mile border every single day. That's right, every day. We're talking trucks loaded with lumber, cars stuffed with maple syrup, and probably a few hockey pucks thrown in for good measure. The USMCA deal signed, sealed, and delivered under Trump's watch in 2020, mind you, is the glue holding this trade bonanza together. Liberals might try to give Biden credit, but we all know who flexed those deal-making muscles to get it done. It's the biggest, most beautiful trade relationship in the world, and it's got Trump's fingerprints all over it. Canada's practically begging to be part of the American dream with every shipment. But it's not just about the Benjamins, though I'd bet Trump's grinning ear to ear at those billions. We're also defense BFFs. NATO, NORAD, the whole shebang. Our militaries are so in sync, they could start a dance troupe. We've got intel sharing through that fancy Five Eyes Club, Joint Continental Defense, and enough law enforcement teamwork to make a buddy cop movie jealous. They're even modernizing NORAD together, cracking down on border bad guys, and tossing in some green tech stuff for the tree huggers. Trump's all about strength, and this partnership's tougher than a steak at a roadside diner. Why stop at allies when we could be one big, happy, star-spangled family? And don't get me started on the border itself, the longest in the world, folks. We're managing it like champs, keeping goods and people flowing smoother than a Trump rally chant. There's environmental teamwork, 2 states and provinces swapping notes on lakes and forests, all that jazz. It's so efficient, you'd think Trump himself designed it, and who's to say he didn't nudge it along? Point is, we're already joined at the hip economically, militarily, even ecologically. Canada's not just a neighbor. They're the cousin who's always over for dinner. Why not make it official? Here's where the story gets fun. It's 2027 in my little fantasy, and Trump's back in the Oval Office, sipping a Diet Coke and eyeballing the border on a map. "Look at this," he says, waving a hand like he's conducting an orchestra. "We've got the best relationship with Canada, tremendous, really. Trade, defense, everything's perfect. They're so close, they're practically American already." His team nods because who's going to argue with genius? And he leans in with that classic Trump grin. "Let's bring 'em in, folks. 51st state, best state, believe me. We'll throw in a Trump Tower in Vancouver, make it a win-win. In my tale, this isn't just a pipe dream, it's the natural next step. The liberals up north might clutch their toques and cry sovereignty. But Trump sees the truth. Canada's already halfway in the door. That $2.7 billion a day trade, it's a lifeline they can't quit. NORAD and NATO, they're leaning on us like a kid on training wheels. And all that border teamwork, it's practically a dress rehearsal for statehood. Trump's not forcing anything, he's just offering the ultimate upgrade. "Join us," he'd say, "and we'll make your bacon crispier, your taxes lower, and your winters optional with a quick drive to Florida." The naysayers probably sipping lattes and some Ottawa calf will whine about independence or international norms, but Trump's never been one for small thinking. He turned NAFTA into USMCA, brought jobs roaring back, and made America the envy of the world. Folding Canada into the mix, child's play for a man who builds empires. Before breakfast. And the payoff? A beefed-up economy, a stronger defense, and a whole new batch of red voters who'll thank him every election cycle. So, in this chapter of the Great Canadian Caper, the U.S.-Canada bond isn't a roadblock, it's the red carpet. To Trump's master plan, we're already best buds. Why not make it forever? It's bold, it's brilliant, and it's so Trump, it hurts. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to go practice my pitch for renaming Niagara Falls, Trump Falls. Stay tuned for the next twist, The Great Canadian Caper, Part 4. history lessons and Trump's time machination. There I was, still plotting how to convince Canada to swap their maple leaf for some stars and stripes when I decided to crack. Open the history books well, more like scroll X for some quick facts, because who has time for dusty libraries? As a die-hard Republican who'd cheer Trump on if he ran for King of the Moon, I figured a peek at the past might show me why this 51 Street state dream isn't as far-fetched as the liberals want us to think. Turns out, history's got some juicy tidbits that scream Trump was onto something all along. Let's hop in the time machine and see how this caper's been brewing for centuries, way back when the U.S. was just a scrappy upstart. Our founding fathers had their eyes on Canada, like it was a shiny new toy. During the Revolutionary War and the War of 1812, we sent troops north to snatch what was then British North America. Picture it, muskets blazing, redcoats scrambling, and a bunch of patriots dreaming of a border that stretched to the Arctic. Didn't quite work out those. Pesky Brits and their Canadian pals pushed us back, but the idea stuck. Fast forward to post-Civil War days, and some American bigwigs were itching to grab Canada again, ticked off that the Brits had cozied up to the Confederacy. Let's take M, they said, probably over a stiff whiskey. But then the Washington Treaty of 1871 rolled around, and we shook hands, agreeing Canada could do its own thing. Boring, right? Trump would have negotiated a better deal, probably thrown in a casino or two over the years. There have been little blips of annexation fever on both sides. Take the Montreal Annexation Manifesto of 1-8 for 9 some Canadian business types, fed up with British taxes, wrote a love letter to the U.S. saying, "Take us, we're yours." It fizzled out faster than a sparkler in a snowstorm, but it proves the spark was there. Others piped up too, dreaming of economic perks, beefier security, or just taming the wild Canadian West with some American grit. Problem was, Canada caught. The nationalism bugs started waving their flag, singing their anthem, and acting like independence was the best thing since sliced bread. Fair enough, but as a Trump fan, I say, why settle for pretty good when you could join the greatest nation on earth? Here's where the story gets a Trump-sized twist. It's 2028 in my little fantasy, and President Trump's lounging in the White House, flipping through a history book. Okay, fine. He's probably watching a recap on TV. Look at this. He booms, pointing at the screen. They've been flirting with us since 1776. Tremendous history, folks. The best. We tried to bring M in before, and now it's time to finish the job. His advisors probably still chuckling from the Niagara Falls rename, nod like bobbleheads. The founding fathers wanted it. The Civil War guys wanted it. And I've got the best wanting of all, believe me. Let's make Canada great, American great. In my tale, Trump doesn't see history. As a roadblock, it's his playbook. Those old invasions? Just practice runs. The Montreal Manifesto. A warm-up act. Canada's clingy, we love our identity vibe. Nothing a little Trump charm can't fix. Picture him on a state visit to Ottawa, golden hair glowing under the northern lights, telling the crowd, "You've got a great country, beautiful, really, but I can make it better. Join us, and I'll build you a wall against boredom, throw in some jobs, and maybe a Trump steaks factory. Best deal ever." The crowd's skeptical at first. Those nationalists are a tough nut. But then he tosses out free hats, and suddenly they're chanting, "USA, USA." The liberals, of course, will screech about autonomy and past tensions, waving their history degrees like it's an unmeeting. But Trump's never been one to let yesterday's flops dictate tomorrow's wins. He turned the economy around, stared down China, and made America first a global catchphrase history's just another challenge he'd crush. Canada's independence streak? Cute, but outdated. With Trump at the helm, those old annexation dreams aren't relics, they're blueprints. Economic perks, security boosts, and a red-hot voting bloc. It's a no-brainer.so. In this chapter of the Great Canadian Caper, history isn't a dusty footnote, it's the wind in Trump's sails. The U.S. and Canada have danced this dance before, and now's the time to seal the deal. Bold? Sure. Brilliant? Absolutely. Pure Trump? You bet your tricorn hat it is. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to brainstorm a campaign slogan for Canada 2028. Make it red, Stay tuned for the next chapter, Patriots. The Great Canadian Caper. Part 5. Eggheads vs. The Don Who's Got the Real Vision. So, there I was, still riding high on the historical wave of Canada's near misses with Uncle Sam, when I decided to see what the so-called experts have to say about this 51 Street state dream. As a red-blooded Republican who trusts Trump to outsmart a room full of FADS blindfolded, I figured I'd give these bookworms a fair shake, mostly so I could prove why our golden-haired genius is light years ahead of their chalkboard scribbles. Let's dive into their chatter and see how it fits into the greatest caper since Trump turned politics into a blockbuster. First up, there's this gal Diane Francis, who wrote a whole book called Merger of the Century. She's singing a tune I can tap my foot to. Merging the U.S. and Canada could fix big problems on both sides. She says it'd beef up our national security, think fewer gaps for bad guys to sneak through and stop America's standard of living from sliding into the dumpster. For Canada, it's a lifeline to tame their giant, icy backyard, which they can barely keep tabs on. I'm nodding along, picturing Trump slapping a mission accomplished banner across the border. Diane's got a point, why fight over crumbs when we could share the whole pie? Sounds like a Trump-style deal to me. But then the naysayers roll in like a snowstorm at a BBQ. A bunch of brainiacs from the University of British Columbia, probably sipping craft beer in Vancouver, call Trump's annexation talk offensive and deeply flawed. They're tossing around big words like economic, political, and legal, saying it'd never work. They point to a poll from December 2024, where only 13% of Canadians said sure to joining the U.S. The other 87% must have been too busy apologizing to vote yes. These profs argue the trade TIs are already tight, the legal hurdles are skyscraper high, and Canadians would rather hug a moose than wave our flag. Typical liberal gloom and doom, can't they see the fun in a challenge? Some other experts, probably the same ones who said Trump couldn't win in 16, claim this is all just a political stunt. They think he's flexing to squeeze Canada on trade or defense, like a poker player bluffing with a royal flush. Feasibility? They say it's a pipe dream, too much red tape, too much whining from Ottawa, and two systems too different to mash together. I'll give him this. It's a tall order. But since when has tough stopped Donald J. Trump? Here's where my story takes the wheel. It's 2029. Trump's still running the show because of course he is, and he's got a stack of expert reports on his desk. Look at this, he says, tossing them aside like yesterday's news. These eggheads say it's impossible. Tremendous nonsense, folks. I've done the impossible before. Best deals, best wins. Believe me. Canada's ready. They just don't know it yet. His team, Lindsey Graham's probably there. Smirking, cheers him on. Diane's right. Trump adds security, jobs, a bigger America, beautiful. The rest? Losers who can't see the forest for the trees. In my little tale, Trump doesn't sweat the skeptics, he steamrolls them. Picture him on a cross-border TV special, golden hair gleaming, facing down a panel of those UBC profs. You say 13, he fires back. I started with less in the primaries and won the whole thing, biggest comeback ever. I'll turn that 13 into 100. Watch me. The audience laughs, the profs squirm, and somewhere in Saskatchewan a farmer thinks, maybe he's onto something. Trump's not fazed by legal mumbo-jumbo or cultural whining. He'd charm Canada into statehood with a rally, a tax cut, and a promise of the best snowplows. Folks, nobody plows better than me. The doubters? They're stuck in the past, clutching their poles like life rafts. But Trump's a future guy, built towers, rebuilt America, and now he's eyeing the great white north. Sure, the experts say it's a long shot, political walls, economic tangles, blah, blah, blah. But Trump's never met a wall he couldn't climb, bust through, or slap his name on. Feasibility's overrated when you've got vision and desirability. He'd make Canada want to think. Trump casinos, Niagara Edition, and jobs galore. So, in this chapter of the Great Canadian Caper, the experts are just background noise to Trump's symphony. Some see potential, most see problems, but none see it like he does, a bold, brilliant chance to make America even greater. History's on his side, the bond's already there, and the man's got the Midas touch. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to sketch out a Trump 2029, Canada's calling bumper sticker. Stay tuned. The best's yet to come. The Great Canadian Caper, Part 6, The pros, the cons, and Trump's golden tutso. There I was, still chuckling over those eggheads tripping over their own footnotes when I decided to tally up the scoreboard. What's in it for us and them if Canada joins the red, white, and blue family? As a Trump-loving Republican who'd bet my last dollar on his every move, I'm ready to see this 51 Street state dream through rose-colored glasses well. MAGA red ones anyway. Let's break down the wins and the wines and watch how Trump turns it all into a blockbuster deal. Spoiler, it's gonna be tremendous, folks. First, the good stuff, and boy, is it good. Picture a merged U.S.-Canada, a hulking economic titan, with a GDP north of $27 trillion. That's more zeros than a liberal's excuse list. No more pesky trade barriers, just one big, beautiful market from Florida to the Yukon. We'd get our hands on Canada's treasure chest, oil to keep our trucks humming, minerals for our factories, and enough fresh water to make California green with envy. Meanwhile, the Canadians? They'd tap into our massive consumer pool, snag cheaper goods, and here's the kicker, maybe even enjoy some of those sweet, sweet Trump tax cuts. I can already hear the cash registers ringing louder than a rally chant. But then come the party poopers with their drawbacks. They say Canada would lose its precious sovereignty, and that quirky culture hockey, Poutine saying sorry for everything. Boo-hoo. I say they'd trade maple leaf melancholy for star-spangled. Swagger sounds like an upgrade to me. The big sticking point, though, health care. Canada's got that government-funded setup, while we've got our private insurance hustle. They're terrified of ditching their free checkups for our system, fretting over bigger bills and longer waits. Look, I get it, nobody wants to trade a doctor's visit for a mortgage payment, but Trump's a fixer. He'd whip up a plan so fast, they'd call it Medicare, Make America Great Again. And there's more grumbling. Canada would go from a big fish in its own pond to a minnow in our 51-state sea. Less political clout, they say, like one vote among 50 beats running their own show. Plus, our gun laws would give their Mounties a heart attack, and merging their parliament with our federal system sounds like a legal mess stickier than spilled syrup. Fair points, maybe, but since when has complicated scared off Donald J. Trump? Here's where my story shifts into high gear. It's 2030. Trump's still the maestro in the White House because legends don't quit, and he's got a whiteboard covered in pros and cons. Look at this, he says, jabbing a marker like it's a golf club. $27 trillion. Huge, folks, the best. Oil, water, jobs, Canada's got it. We want it. Win-win. His team Lindsay's there, probably sipping a Coke, nods like it's gospel. The cons? Trump grins. Sovereignty? I'll give him pride American. Pride, the best kind. Health care? I'll build a system so great, they'll thank me every checkup. Politics? They'll love voting red, trust me. In my tale, Trump doesn't just see benefits, he makes them happen. Picture him at a border town rally, straddling the line with that trademark swagger. Canada, he booms. You're getting the deal of the century. Cheaper stuff, stronger borders, and I'll throw in a Trump resort in Banff Beautiful. Folks, nobody skis better than me. The crowd, half American, half Canadian, cheers. Even the skeptics. He'd tackle healthcare with a wave of his hand. We'll blend the best private speed, public heart, done. Gun laws? They'll love freedom, maybe start with BB guns, ease 'em in. Legal tangles? He'd cut through red tape like a chainsaw through butter. The naysayers probably huddled in some Toronto cafe will moan about culture and clout. But Trump's a unifier, he'd keep the hockey, spice up the poutine with some BBQ, and turn sorry into you're welcome, the $27 trillion jackpot. That's the carrot. The stick? Join us, or watch us thrive without you. He'd wink. Canada wouldn't just survive, they'd shine, red state style. With electoral votes tipping the scales for decades. So, in this chapter of the Great Canadian Caper, the pros and cons aren't roadblocks, they're Trump's playground. Benefits like a turbocharged economy and resource riches. He'd max. Out. Drawbacks like healthcare hiccups and sovereignty sobs. He'd spin into gold. It's bold, it's brilliant, and it's pure Trump taking a tough pitch and hitting it out of the park. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to draft a Trump 2030, Canada's cashing in poster. Stay tuned, and this ride's just heating up. The Great Canadian Caper, Part 7. The people speak, but Trump's got the mixo. There I was. Still tallying up the wins of a U.S.-Canada merger like a kid counting candy, when I figured it's time to check the pulse of the people. As a Trump-worshipping Republican who'd follow him through a blizzard in a T-shirt, I'm not one to let a few polls dim my MAGA glow, but I'll humor him. What do the folks on both sides of the border think about this 51 Street state caper? Spoiler alert, Canada's grumpy, America's split, and Trump's about to turn it all into a rally-worthy win. Let's dive into the chatter and see how the master plays this crowd. Up north, the Canadians are clutching their toques like it's a national emergency. A YouGov poll from January 2025 says 77% of them want nothing to do with becoming part of the U.S., with just 15% saying, maybe. The Angus Reid folks cranked it up to 90% shouting, no way, in a hypothetical referendum talk about a cold shoulder. From coast to coast, across every party, they're united in their keep Canada-Canadian vibe. I get it, nobody wants to trade moose for bald eagles overnight, but where's the vision, folks? Trump could sell ice to a polar bear. This should be a breeze. Down here in the land of the free, it's a mixed bag like a potluck where half brought steak and half brought kale. YouGov's got 36% of Americans cheering yes to annexation, 42% saying nah, and the rest shrugging like they're late for a ball game. Angus Reid pegs it at 25% for, 49% against, still a toss-up. Here's the kicker. 75-80 of us think it's Canada's call, all noble and democratic. Only a tiny crew wants to flex economic or military muscle to force it good, because Trump's charm's worth more than a dozen tanks. Oh, and get this. A Ledger poll from March 2025 says 20% of Americans want their state to ditch the U.S. and join Canada. What's next? Florida begging for poutine. Now, let's spin this into my story. It's 2031. Trump's still the king of D.C. because legends don't fade, and he's eyeballing these polls over a Big Mac. Look at this, he says, waving a fry like a scepter. Canada's at 15 tremendous potential. Folks, I started lower in 16 and won big. America's split? Perfect. I love a challenge. Best challenges. Believe me. His team Lindsay's there, probably doodling Trump 2032 on a napkin, grins like it's Christmas. They'll come around, Trump adds. I'll make em an offer so great, they'll beg to join, best offer ever. In my little fantasy, Trump doesn't see these numbers as a brick wall. He sees a crowd to win over. Picture him on a mega stage straddling the border, half in Buffalo, half in Niagara, golden hair whipping in the wind. Canada, he booms. 15% love me already, beautiful people, smart people. The rest? You're missing out, jobs, freedom. The best America. 90% no. I'll flip that faster than you can say. Maple syrup. Then he turns south. America. 36% yes. You're my base, tremendous. The 42% no. Watch me work. Nobody persuades better than me. The crowd roars, Canadians. Thaw a bit. Americans wave flags. And even that 20% secession crowd rethinks their poutine dreams. The doubters, probably sipping lattes in Seattle or sobbing in Ottawa, will cry. The people don't want it. But Trump's a people's champ. He turned never into now before. Canada's 90% no. He'd charm em with tax cuts, border security, and a Trump hockey league that'd make the NHL jealous. America's wafflers? He'd rally em with promises of oil, water, and a bigger, badder nation. Red votes for days. That 20% eyeing Canada? Stay put. He'd wink. I'll bring Canada to you, better deal, folks. So, in this chapter of the Great Canadian Caper, public opinion isn't a stop sign, it's Trump's warm-up act. Canada's grumpy. America's on the fence, but he's got the mick and the magic. Bold? You bet. Brilliant? Always. Pure Trump? Like a steak cooked rare and winning. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to whip up a Trump 2031. Border? What border? Chant. Stay tuned, as this crowd's about to flip. The Great Canadian Caper, Part 8. The grand finale, Trump's triumph or a tease. So, here we are, at the end of my wild ride, dreaming up Canada as the 51st state, and I've got my MAGA hat tipped just right for the big finish. As a Trump-loving Republican who'd bet my last burger on his every word, I've spun this tale. From whispers to rallies, history to polls, and pros to cons. Now it's time to tie it all up with a bow red, white, and blue, naturally, and see if the great Canadian caper lands with a Trump-sized bang or a wink. Let's roll the credits. Folks, but don't expect me to go quietly. The eggheads and pollsters will tell you there's no official talk of Canada joining the U.S., no papers signed, no handshakes sealed. Canada's bigwigs, like that floppy-haired Trudeau, keep shouting, no chance. Louder than a hockey crowd, and there's no serious political posse on either side pushing this merger. Fair enough, no one's storming Ottawa with a flag yet. They say the idea of Canada backing Democrats to spite us Republicans as a reason for annexation. Pure bunk. Sure, 60% of Canucks cheer for Harris over Trump, but that doesn't mean they're itching to ditch their maple leaf for our eagle. Polls scream it. 90% would vote no faster than you can say, bummer, right? Not to Trump, he'd see 10% yes and call it a beachhead. The U.S.-Canada bromance. Stronger than ever, too. $7 billion a day in trade. NATO and NORAD handshakes, a border longer than a Trump speech. History's tossed annexation ideas around like a hot potato revolutionary war, civil war, that Montreal Manifesto flop, but Canada's nationalism always spiked the ball. Experts, mostly Debbie Downers, moaning about politics, economics, culture, like it's too hard for a dealmaker like Trump. Public opinion? Canada's a brick wall of, nope. America's a shrug fest with 36%, sure, and 42%, nah. The numbers say it's a long shot. Folks know 51st star on the flag tomorrow, but here's where my story shines. It's 2032. Trump's still the maestro because legends don't quit, and he's lounging in the Oval Office, golden hair aglow, smirking at the naysayers. They say it's impossible. He booms, tossing a poll printout like confetti. No proposals, no support, tremendous doubters, folks. But I've beaten worse odds-best comebacks, believe me. Canada's not ready? I'll make 'em ready. His team Lindsay's there, probably planning a golf trip cheers like it's 2016 again. Strong TIs, big history, huge potential. Trump ads. I'll throw in a Trump Tower Toronto, seal the deal beautiful. In my tale, this isn't a dead end, it's Trump's encore. Picture him at one last border bash, straddling the line, megaphone in hand. Canada, he roars. You love your freedom, your poutine great stuff, folks. But I've got more jobs. Power, the best America. 10% yes? I'll turn it to 1-0, nobody flips better than me. Then to us, America. 36% yes? You're my people, tremendous. The rest? Watch me win, I've got the best wins. The crowd erupts, Canadians thaw, Americans wave flags, and even Trudeau cracks a smile maybe. He'd spin the No basis. Chatter into a challenge. They say no basis. I'll build one strongest basis, folks. The killjoys sipping lattes in Vancouver or whining in D.C. will insist it's fantasy. No official moves, no public love, too many hurdles. They're right about the facts, Canada's. Not signing up today, and the partnership's cozy as is. But Trump's never been about today, he's tomorrow's guy. He turned never into now on trade, walls, and wins galore. This caper, maybe it's a tease, a political jab to keep Canada on its toes, or maybe it's the seed of a future so bold, only Trump could plant it. Me? I'm betting on the latter 27 trillion red votes and a borderless BBQ. That's Trump's America, eh? So, the great Canadian caper wraps with a nod to reality, no merger yet, but a wink to Trump's magic. History, TIs, opinions all say tough. Trump says, watch me, bold. Check. Brilliant. Always. Pure Trump. Like a steak sizzling on the grill. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a Trump 2032, Canada's coming banner to hang. Thanks for riding along. Patriots keep dreaming big, eh? And that's a wrap on the great Canadian caper. What did you think? Would Trump pull off the ultimate deal? Or is Canada sticking to its maple leaf roots? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your take. If you enjoyed this wild ride and learned a few English twists along the way, hit that like button. Share this story with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to Story Driven English for more fun tales to boost your English skills. Ring that bell so you never miss an adventure. Thanks for joining us. Folks, see you in the next story. Bye for now, and keep practicing those English vibes.